Thank you for joining us for the next in our series of encouragement in crisis videos. Today, crisis in the workplace. So I'm really privileged here to have Marv Gingrich and Stephanie Brayshaw and Scott Rupert here with us. And I'm going to start with you, Stephanie. You serve, and I would say with excellence here, as our facility manager. And we'd like to hear from you because there's a uniqueness to your situation. This is your workplace, but also your place of worship. How you and your co-workers, how have you responded to this crisis in the workplace?
Thanks, Gord. So the last 2 years, we, like many other workplaces, have gone through a crisis with having to change and alter the way that we do things. It was a very difficult time. My coworkers and I are all different people with different thoughts and perspectives and views, and we all deal with things very differently. Through our struggles and crisis, we continuously had to change and adjust how we do things. Everyone's roles and responsibilities were different. And not only was our workplace being hit with a crisis, we all had to go into survival mode in our personal life as well.
Right.
So the reason why we're able to get through this crisis well and still be united, I believe, is because as coworkers, we had a strong foundation prior to this crisis. We were not just coworkers, we had built friendships. We enjoyed being around each other. We learned to communicate with each other. We took time to listen and to try to understand each other's perspectives. This then created a foundation that was strong enough to weather any storm that came our way. Now, that doesn't mean that we didn't struggle. We've had many tears during this time.
Yeah.
There were some very difficult conversations. We did not always agree, being frustrated with each other and over the circumstances that we were put in. Feelings of being overwhelmed. And the cool thing with that was that not everyone was overwhelmed at the same time. So we were able to help and support each other through those overwhelming moments. We were able to get through this storm because of our previous foundation that we created. We respected each other. We knew how to communicate and to listen. We showed love and kindness to each other. And it reminds me of the parable that Jesus shares about the man who built his house on a rock in Matthew 7, how the rains came down and the winds blew and beat against the house, but it didn't fall. It had its foundation on rock. It was solid. Our foundation was strong. It took a beating, but it held up. I am so thankful that I get to work with a team of people who love each other, show grace and kindness, and have patience, who want the best for each other. We have learned and grown so much, and this crisis could have brought a huge division amongst our team. I believe that our existing foundation, and with God's help and guidance, helped us weather the storm and has made us stronger. I know that not everyone works in a Christian environment with Christian coworkers, but I believe that the lesson of having a strong foundation with your coworkers can be done in a secular setting as well.
Steph, thank you so much. And I know that what you say is true. It's part of the reason it was so delightful to come back and be part of the staff environment again. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Marv, I'm going to come over to you now, actually. And you've been, I think, just coming up on 30 years, right, at Marspan in Drayton. And you work not only with the manufacturing side, but also as part of the ownership group. And so I think a good question for you is, in leadership, as a Christian in leadership, are there certain aspects of the responsibility of that? How do you treat customers? How do you treat employees as a Christian in leadership?
Well, good questions. I think for me, Philippians 2, verses 1 to 8, imitating Christ's humility is a good starting point for me. I like verses 3 and 4, where it talks about honoring one another. There's so many different viewpoints, opinions, convictions surrounding the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Not all customers and employees agree on the guidelines that have been put in place.
Right.
But I think for most part, they have honored one another and respected one another. As a Christian in leadership at a workplace, I have the responsibility to provide a safe working environment for our employees during this pandemic and otherwise. Imitating Christ's humility during a time of crisis can be a challenge and equally important. Our actions and words can impact people in a negative way or a positive way, making it even more critical to be united with Christ. Being respectful of our employees' and customers' viewpoints while encouraging one another to put the interests of others before our own.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks, Mark. Scott, I'm going to come over to you now. And Scott, you are part owner of ESM Farm Equipment, but your daily role also includes the day-to-day management of the company. And so, Scott, as a Christian, what would you say the biggest challenge is in the workplace?
Well, certainly the views, the polarizing views, and just being able to be open with the employees. I think when there's so many views coming from different directions, it's very difficult sometimes to just sit back and listen. We want to talk, we want to correct things, but just listening to the different views. And yet at the same time, as an owner, you feel a responsibility to follow the authority that the government has. And at Woodside, we also believe that, this is an authority that the Bible has laid out for us to follow. So, yeah, how do you do that? You've got these polarizing views, you've got the authority, and how do you do this all in truth and love? So that's been a challenge, and I think a lot of us would like do-overs and to be able to go back and say, you know what, I didn't have that conversation right, or I didn't act right here. Could I do that again? So for myself, I've had to put my heart on the operating table many times and look at my heart and say, you know what, you weren't right here. You need to apologize, and you need to ask forgiveness from God too. So that's certainly been a process that I've had to go through, and then trying to keep at the forefront what we as Christians are supposed to do. So as a Christian leader at work, I should be reflecting the fruits of the Spirit, and unfortunately I'm not always. So again, going back to the basics, putting God first, examining my heart, and trying to do the right thing the right way.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for sharing this. I think we've all learned a lot through these last couple of years. Some of them painful lessons, but hopefully we're better for it going forward. But thank you so much. And thanks again for joining us for this video on Crisis in the Workplace.